talking to Olivia Allen today. Hey, Olivia.
Olivia.
Mm-hmm. There was an old Whisper song called Olivia the Slave.
Hey.
Oh, really?
Well, that's what it was called. She got distracted on her way to grandmother's house. And then it goes on to how she got recruited into prostitution.
Sounds
Honey, I'm
familiar.
not really sure that's the best introduction that we
That's
can
the
make.
vibe.
It's just an old Whisper song. But this is not our friend, Olivia Allen, who we have known for years. And I mean, gosh, like 13 years almost? 12 years.
It'll be 13 in October.
Damn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Wow.
And for you guys on camera, she hasn't changed a bit.
No, she has not.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think
kindly.
maybe your hair was like a little bit longer when we met you.
Yeah, maybe a
but
little lighter.
Little
maybe.
longer, lighter.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but
Little more
other than
eyeliner.
that, a little more eyeliner, a little less children,
Yes.
Uh-huh.
a little less
children.
married.
A little more boobs too. Let me
Yeah,
say. Let
right?
me tell you.
Hey, I'm not even going there.
Okay, so before we get started, because I'm going on a book tour soon, you and I talked about that.
Yeah.
Tell me what 3 items you have to pack in your carry-on.
A book.
Okay.
So I don't pack these, but I have to have them when I travel.
Yeah.
Peanut M&Ms.
Ah, yeah.
Yum,
A-
yum.
airport purchase?
The airport purchase.
Okay.
And chapstick.
Chapstick. Yeah.
I cannot
that's
travel
smart.
without chapstick. That
Yeah.
would give me an anxiety attack.
You would have to like run back as the plane was
100%.
closing the doors.
Yeah.
Like,
We have an
Yeah.
emergency.
Because it gets so dry.
yeah. And you can't borrow the person next to you's chapstick. 'Cause
No, because
No.
that's disgusting.
1975, you could do that.
But what are yours?
Oh, that's what I'm trying to figure out. I think my satin pillowcase.
Okay.
That's like when I can't sleep in a hotel on regular pillows. So,
That's creepy.
and then I'm gonna interview some more people and see. But like I have Kiehl's lip balm. Like that's my other thing. I have to have that.
Yeah.
So I would have that with me. My satin pillowcase.
Your neck pillow. You
on my neck pillow. Yeah. So that might be the 3 things
Uh-huh.
that I have
Yeah.
to have on the plane.
No snack. It's not like you don't get anxious if you don't have something to
It
eat.
depends on the length of the flight. Yeah. And because we're plant-based, we usually do bring our own snacks because they are, what they have for us is fruit.
Yeah, they have
Yeah,
fruit. I
that's-
know.
That's the plant-based option, and salad with no dressing. Yum.
Uh-huh. We're
Very
working on that.
exciting.
Very exciting. Where were we? They had Impossible something on the plane.
Yeah, I can't remember who that was. Was it?
Was it Delta?
I think it might have been Delta. Yeah.
I feel like you posted it.
Yeah, well, shout out to
We were-
Delta.
Yeah,
if
and
it
I
them.
was like,
think
wait a
so.
minute,
Yeah.
that's cool.
I think that's
Uh-huh.
right. I think that's right. So thank you for that. I am
Yeah.
Laura Cathcart Robbins. This is the only one in the room, but I'm never the only one in this room because, as usual, my boyfriend, producer, and co-host, Scott Slaughter, who I call Hun, is here as well.
Hi, honey.
Hey, Hun. So, yeah, we are talking to our friend Olivia Allen. Like I said, she is the co-host of the podcast Broad Ideas with Rachel Bilson. Longtime best friends, cover all these topics from mental health to taboo sex combos. It's very spicy.
It's a little spicy.
It's very spicy. I like
know.
it. I like it. So Olivia, she has a certification of completion and a master's degree program in spiritual psychology, which we're going to talk about, from the University of Santa Monica. Her work spans from one-on-one coaching to facilitating workshops. And as an actress, she believes in infusing creativity in everything. Wait, I'm going to read that again. As an actress, she believes infusing creativity in all we do helps to feed our souls. Yes, I love that. Hello, like shout out to the creatives, right?
Completely.
Yeah, we need us.
Yeah. Yeah.
We need us in the world, and your optimism.
Like I said earlier, it's
Yes.
trained optimism.
Yes.
It is.
I work hard on it.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, I had to work hard to not succumb to, like, what's the opposite of optimism? Pessimism.
Pessimism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To
I
work
mean,
hard.
honey, you are still Laura. We'll see.
I
Scott
am.
Robbins.
I am. But
We'll see.
I will. Yeah, I don't want to buy into it's going to be great, but I do like to see the sunny side of stuff. I think that's my
Yeah.
nature,
Okay.
And so I just try not to go too far into the we'll see mentality and stay on that sunny side. we're going to talk about so many things, but we're going to talk first about your family of origin, which we were talking about in the hallway. But I want you to tell me who your family of origin is and what it was like growing up in that family.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
We're gonna start it that
We're
way.
going to start there. Yes,
Jump
we are.
right in.
Yep. So I'm the youngest of three. I was born into a family, my mom and my dad, and they didn't have. My mom had a son before I was born, my brother David, and his dad passed away.
Mm.
And my dad was his dad's friend. So he came over to check on my mom, check on the family. Little by little, they fell in love. And she ended up remarrying to my father. And then they had myself and my sister. So there was three of us.
Yeah.
And we grew up in Santa Barbara. Moved to Los Angeles when I was 10.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm very open about the fact that I grew up with two alcoholic parents. I grew up with alcoholic grandparents, alcoholic aunts, uncles, cousins, jailers.
Yeah.
Just like throw any configuration of family in there. And that was one of the biggest things that everyone had in common.
Mm.
And, they're the coolest people, the raddest people, the funniest people, amazing, charismatic, beautiful. Are we allowed to cuss on this one?
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay.
Fuck yeah.
Up.
Yeah.
Fucked up human beings.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, I don't know if you know this. So it was the three of us growing up. And my mom told me when I was about 14 years old, I remember we were at El Torito. And I admitted to her that I was doing drugs. I was like 13 years old. And I admitted to her that I had done hallucinogens. And she said, well, I have something I would like to admit to you too. And I was like, what? And it seemed serious, And she told me that when she was, I believe, 18, 19, she gave a baby up for adoption.
I did not know this.
Yeah, we found him recently.
Really?
On 23andMe.
Oh my goodness.
I know. It was just nuts. So I actually have another brother. So there's four of us now.
Wow.
And
is he nearby?
He's in San Francisco, but he's part of the family now. And that whole thing was just wild and unbelievable. And he looks just like my mom.
Oh my goodness.
Sober.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. It runs in the veins.
Yeah, it does. Well, isn't that cool that maybe if he weren't, he wouldn't be alive, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it was amazing. We were watching the show This Is Us. And did you watch it?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the storyline was like the guy connected with his father.
Randall.
Yeah, exactly. And one night my mom went to sleep and she was like crying. And I was like, what's going on? And she was just like, I hope I don't have to live the rest of my life never meeting my son. And I was like, whoa, and because it was a closed adoption. And so that came up. And then like a week later, I was on 23andMe and an uncle came up. And I was like, who's this uncle so-and-so? And she's like, I have no idea who that is. So I was just thinking like it was a mistake or, some random person. And someone was like, wait a minute, that would make sense that that's your brother because it's equal parts, just like an uncle would show up as 25% of you.
Wow.
So-
Wow.
so-
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I wrote in, I was like, hey, random, but you may be my brother. And he said, that's why I got on this.
Damn. So this was recent.
This was probably about right before the pandemic, maybe 4 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Wow.
to answer your question, there's four of us in the family,
Yeah.
but
But three of you grew up together.
three of us grew up together.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
And you're the baby.
Yeah.
So what was the dynamic like with your siblings growing up?
My siblings, so my brother was 7 years older.
Right.
I absolutely love him. He is one of my favorite humans that I've ever come across. Growing up, he was awful. He was a bully, and, you know, he was an older brother, and he was a lot of trouble. You know, I grew up in a very different way. We grew up in Santa Barbara and then moved to the Valley. And when we did, you know, my brother started going in and out of prison, in and out of jail at that point when he was in 6th grade. Wow. And so to this day, he's actually in jail now, but he has gone in and out his whole life. So he has been completely institutionalized. And that was a relationship that I just kind of forged as it went. Like, when he got out, I had all of him. And then when he'd go away, I'd disconnect and try and get on with life. And, you know, as far as my sister goes, she too has struggled with the same disease that all of us in my family have. You know, I'm 12 years sober now, and my sister too has had her struggles.
When you were little, what's the age difference between you and her?
3 years.
3 years. Were you like the little sister tagging along, trying to like make her friends your friends?
Yeah. Oh, I worshipped her.
You worshipped her.
I worshipped her. She was so cool and so beautiful and cool. And, you know, the greatest thing about growing up with them is that no matter where I went, I was instantly taken care of. So I never had to deal with people bullying me, people being mean or excluding me, because they'd be like, oh, that's Sabrina's little sister, or that's David's little sister. Like, she's good, you know? And so I kind of grew up way too fast. And so when they were exposed to things, I was exposed to things. So my brother would push the envelope, get in trouble, and it would be this whole thing. But by the time I was 14, 15, it was like my mom was tired, and I was able to like smoke weed in the house and smoke cigarettes in the house. And, you know, it's thinking of it now as a mother, I'm like, that is bananas.
Yes.
Bananas.
Yeah.
But it was normal. And, you know, I looked up to these two, you know, with all my heart and soul, and that's what they were doing. So that's what I wanted to do. And I don't blame them for that. It's not, you know.
Isn't it interesting how, like, your relationship that you described with your brother, where, you have all of him when he's available, and then you disconnect when he's gone. Like, that's a normal. You normalize that. And so normal is, you know, like they say, a setting on a dryer. Normal is, what is ODAT say, hun?
Oh, I don't know. I was going to say it's average to the population.
That's what she says. Yeah. Normal is average to the population. But we can normalize whatever our situation is and keep it moving, right? Whereas other people might be stopped in their tracks by the dynamic you described. Like, you what?
Right.
He goes to prison and then you disconnect, and then he comes back and you're all in. Like that can sound bananas, but it was the reality of your life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the same with, you know, and that was something that I looked at for a long time with men, because I had the same dynamic with my dad, having an alcoholic dad, and he was like the funniest and most charming and lovable, and I just like lived for him, but he wasn't an accountable dad, right? And so I would take all of him when I had him, but just not knowing when I would get him back. And so I repeated that same relationship that I had with my dad and my brother with men.
Sure.
Right? Like from the moment I discovered guys, I was like, let me find the most adorable, unavailable guy in the room.
Yes.
You know?
Yes. And you'll take all of him and then none of him and all of him and then none of him.
Yeah, that was a healing process to have to really figure out how to change that.
Sure. Tell me about your dad, your relationship with him.
So growing up, I always had a great relationship with my father. It was different from my brother and my sister because they were a little bit older and they were at the point where they could see that there was some resentments to be had, right?
Right.
But for
right.
me, I never got to that point with him. I just kind of saw him, understood him, and loved him. And my mom and dad divorced when I was 3. And at that time, we moved out. My mom remarried. We moved in with another man. And I would go see my dad on the weekends and, you know, that kind of relationship. But it wasn't the parental figure that I really needed. But it didn't feel that way to me.
Right.
So it's not like I was sitting there like, why didn't he come? Or where is he? It was just like, oh, we're seeing him. Cool. Like, it felt, like you said, it felt normal.
Yeah.
That was my normal. So it wasn't like something I was suffering because of.
Right. Right.
And I kind of got the whole alcoholism thing really young.
You got that he had it?
I got that he had it and
Yeah.
that my mom had it.
Right. Did you
Yeah.
think that you had it then?
No, but I will say, and this is something that sounds very shocking to a lot of people, but I remember my first drink and I was 3 years old because I remember my dad would sit in his love seat and he would have a little shot glass and he would pour it with peppermint schnapps.
Oh, peppermint
and I
schnapps.
would, yeah, despicable. And I would go around the back and I would shoot it back and I'd realize he didn't know I was doing that because he drank so much. He would just think his glass was
Right.
empty
He's
and
like,
he
"Who
would
drank
just
that?"
he would just refill it. But I
Yeah.
remember getting drunk. I remember my first time getting drunk. I was about 3 years old.
Wow.
And I know that because of the house we lived in. And I got attention for it because I was singing like, "You Are My Sunshine," and everyone was laughing and they were like, "Oh my God, Olivia got drunk." And I remember the feeling of feeling like cute and funny and hilarious. And oh my gosh, like it wasn't a negative thing.
Right.
And that,
Nobody admonished you. You weren't in trouble.
no,
No. They were
No.
kind of delighted by your...
they thought it was hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And then so when I would clean up at parties and stuff, I would drink the drinks.
Yeah.
I would taste it and drink it. And by the time I was in, I don't even know, 2nd or 3rd grade, like my brother would have us hitting the bong. And we were
Wow.
legitimately smoking weed in like 2nd grade. And I remember my sister getting upset. She didn't like it. And I remember thinking, what is wrong with her? Lighten up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I'd put on his sunglasses and all his friends would laugh. And it's like my first interaction with substances was positive attention,
Yeah.
you know? So
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I like this feeling.
Sure. I can totally relate to that.
Really?
Not so much your story at that age, but the kind of fun, glamorous, cool aspect of it, and other people being like, what? What? And you're like, but it wasn't like that. It was
Right.
It wasn't dark and like it didn't feel dirty, or it just felt like really cool and fun. And why isn't everybody doing this?
Right.
Right?
Completely.
Yeah.
Yeah. When people hear that, they're like, oh, that's child abuse.
Right.
And I'm like, wow, it didn't feel like it.
No.
You know?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, totally. And Scott will probably talk to you a little bit more about that too. Not that Scott was raised as an only child, so he didn't have that experience with siblings, but he has some crazy stories from that age.
I believe
I
it.
don't know about 3. Well,
No,
I don't
no.
know.
But
Anyway.
yeah. But well, I was thinking more like middle school
Yeah.
and right?
It got crazy
yeah.
real fast.
Yeah, it did. So you are somebody who kind of parties as a kid.
Yeah.
Like, right, in the way that we want to use that word, right? Sometimes people say partying and they're really not partying. They're just drinking and it's terrible. But
Right.
you were literally partying. You were having
no, I was
fun.
partying for
Yeah.
a long time.
Yeah. And you were also going to school regularly?
No.
No.
Don't know where you got that information.
I'm just painting a picture.
No.
So you were, yeah.
Like, I was going to school regularly until the 6th grade.
Mm-hmm.
In 6th grade, I discovered, 7th grade, I discovered marijuana and ditching. And that became a full-blown addiction.
Right.
I ditched school to the point where I failed every single year.
Wow.
and I'd have to go to summer school, and there would be truant officers that would be calling. There'd be people, we would run from them. I'd be chased by them.
Wow.
And no, I developed a full-blown addiction in 7th grade, and it lasted all the way through till junior high. And then high school, I got kicked out of 5 high schools.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So kicked out because you were truant, because you weren't going to class?
Yeah.
So they're just like, you've got to go someplace else?
Yeah, so I'd go
Yeah.
someplace else, and then I would not be able to stop ditching.
Right. So
It
you really
was
did
a
have
real-
an addiction to
No,
it.
it was
Yeah.
an addiction.
Yeah.
Because I'd be like, I can do better, and like, I will, and I'd recommit, and then I would leave.
Yeah.
I would think
Yeah.
of like food at my house, and I'd be like, I would rather go home,
And
get
eat those
stoned,
donuts. Yes.
and eat top ramen.
Top ramen.
And that's how I would
Yeah.
lure people. I'd be like, do you want to go back to my house and eat macaroni and cheese?
Yeah.
And they'd be like,
Yeah.
yeah. You know what I
Let's
mean?
go.
Like,
Yeah.
let's go.
For sure.
Yeah, it was an issue.
So as this was happening, you're still visiting your dad on the weekends?
Well, so when we moved from Santa Barbara to Los Angeles,
Yeah.
he then moved to San Diego.
Okay.
And so it got less and less. Like, I remember probably from the age of like 12 to 15, it was way more sporadic. It was like, we'll take a trip down to San Diego and see him and stay with him, or he would come for a birthday, or,
Right.
you know, it wasn't like a, you see your dad every weekend.
More long distance relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to talk about when he was killed, but I don't know how you want to talk about that. So are you okay with just talking about it? Would you want to stay away from anything? Like,
No, I mean, I'm really open about it, because I
Okay.
think it's an important conversation.
yeah.
And, you know, there's not really much to stay away from.
Okay.
I feel comfortable with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because you were 15.
Yes.
And so this happened in San Diego?
This happened in San Diego. Interestingly enough, I feel like the universe works in really crazy ways, because I haven't thought about this day. I haven't touched this day in a long time. Like, I've definitely, obviously, through my sobriety, processed it, deep therapy, all of that kind of stuff. But today is the first day I wrote a story about it, not having to do with being on this podcast, but I wrote a story about it to share with someone, because she's helping me with some writing. And so I went back in my mind and revisited that for the first time. And then, of course, it's the day
That you're coming to talk to us about it. Yeah.
So it's just a weird synchronicity. Do you want me to just tell you?
Yeah. Tell us the story.
So I was 15 years old. I got woken up on Father's Day morning, and my mom and sister came and said, you got to come in the room with us. It's Dad. And I just was like, oh, fuck, yes, it's Father's Day. And they were like, it is, but no, like, something tragic has happened. He was killed. He was killed by a police officer. And I remember just being like, what? Like, it didn't register. I couldn't understand what they were saying, because my dad was an alcoholic, zero violence, like, never lifted a finger, never got in a fist fight, never stole. Like, this guy was not a criminal. He was not a bad guy. He was a loving human being with, you know, a family that loved him. Like, it just wasn't registering. I'm like, I don't understand what this means, you know?
Yeah.
And basically what happened was he was drunk driving, and these cops stayed outside of the bar, followed him for about 5 miles, and he didn't do anything wrong. He went in through a drive-through, got food. They got the order wrong. He went back through, and finally, after 5 miles, he stopped too far into the crosswalk.
So they were tailing him for the purpose of catching him when he did something wrong.
Correct. Yes. And so he pulled too far into the crosswalk. At this point, they had called for backup. Why? I don't know. Like, why would someone need backup to pull someone over for pulling too far into the crosswalk, right? So they got a cop car in front of him and a cop car behind him. And the officer came to the window and was asking him, like, you know, do you have weapons, whatever. They searched the car. There was another officer on the other side, on the passenger side window. And my dad was drunk. He had been drinking. I mean, his blood alcohol was like something that would kill most people, but he was such a high functioning alcoholic that he literally didn't even swerve for 5 miles. Like, but he was drunk, you know? And so he got a little bit, not even defiant, like just kind of questioning, like, why am I being pulled over? You know? And the guy was like, you got to put your hands up or whatever. And he went to grab his bag of food that he was returning. And he showed it to the police officer and shook the bag and was like, they got my French fries wrong. And the guy just pulled out a gun and shot him 6 times in the chest. And the other officer was in the line of fire. She had to duck and get cover and pull her weapon because she was terrified. She ended up testifying and saying that she had filed a report that week saying if someone doesn't do something, this man is going to kill someone.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. He had failed 5 mental tests at other places. And for whatever reason, they hired him without a mental test.
So it is from her that you have this account of what happened?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We obviously called her to the stand when we went to trial, but it was a wrongful.
Oh, yeah.
It was a wrongful death. And, you know, the whole experience was like one of those moments where you're like, no, this doesn't happen in real life. This happens to people out there on the news. Like, this isn't something that happens in real life. And I remember the next day them flashing my dad's picture and our pictures and being like, Michael Allen was wrongfully killed by a police officer. And it was just obviously shocking, but deeply traumatizing to the family on every single level you can imagine, right? But mostly it's like it was just wrong.
Yeah.
And the sad part is that it could have been avoided.
Well, I'm thinking as you're telling me this, and I'm so sorry, Olivia. I'm so sorry that happened to you, that happened to him.
Yeah.
And that it happened to your family. And I don't mean this tritely. I really can't imagine what that must have been like. So I'm so grateful for you explaining to us.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually kind of want to, because I'm watching, you know, we're obviously in the news now. We're watching all these young men getting killed by the police, right? The most recent one, he was beaten to death and not shot to death. But and I see the families, you know, on the news, and I can't imagine that I would have enough fortitude to get up and talk to cameras, talk to press, to fight for justice. Mm-hmm. What was your experience with that?
With fighting for justice?
Yeah.
You know, it's really interesting because I was talking to my friend about it today because she was helping me write something. And I was like, you know what the most fucked up part about it was? I remember when we met with a lawyer. He was a sweetheart. He was a wonderful man. But basically, we got coached into how we needed to be, how we needed to present, what clothes we needed to wear, who we had at court with us, how we selected the jury based on how we were going to play into their sympathy. And I remember just being like, how does this matter?
Right.
What does it matter what I'm wearing Why do I need to present a certain way so that people know that this was wrong?
Yeah.
And the truth of the matter, and I was telling my friend this today, the truth of the matter is we won for wrongful death. And I'm not saying it's not because we didn't deserve it. Of course we deserved it. Of course we deserved to win for wrongful death. And that wasn't like the cop didn't go to jail.
That's what I was going to ask.
No, none of that. None of that. But where I sit today, I know we were fortunate in the sense that we were white and that we looked like good people. And they really, like, the truth is, like, I had my belly button pierced and I was wearing crop tops and you know, tennis shoes and whatever. And they're like, you need to wear skirts and button up shirts and headbands. And I remember feeling like this is the most fucked up thing in the world, that I have to prove I'm worthy of you killing my father or not.
Yeah.
How does that make any sense? And the truth is, like, that's what people are being faced with every day. And in the fight for justice, like, I feel like we didn't have any cameras on us. Nobody fucking cared. Nobody was asking us, how do you feel? No one was helping us fight for justice. No one was saying, this is happening, something needs to be done. We were completely isolated and alone in it. Like, zero. I mean, not a single person reached out and was like, hey, this isn't right. Like, let us rally behind you and stand behind you. And so when I see what's happening today, I'm like, get out there. You know what I mean? Like, when people are getting out there and getting behind these families, because you can sit there and you can say, like, I can't imagine what that would be like. I don't know if I could do it.
Yeah.
The human spirit is so resilient and so incredibly powerful that the love is bigger than any grief we can go through.
Yeah.
Right? And if we use that to push us, it makes you keep going. It makes you show up. It makes you, like, the things that you're capable of are so much greater than your imagination can provide you with.
Right.
You know? And, like, I look at those families and I'm like, it's one simple thing pushing them is love for their loved one. Like, they have to.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Do you, I agree. I hear all that. Like, it makes complete sense that the kind of autopilot one might go into because this must be done. You know, the person that you loved must be taken care of, whatever that looks like still, right? So some of the feedback I've gotten, because, you know, I wrote that memoir, addiction memoir, Stash.
Yeah.
And some of the feedback on Goodreads is that they don't feel that sorry for me because I came from a place of privilege. So the things that I went through aren't as sympathetic. They're not as sympathetic to it because I had X, Y, and Z to begin with. Do you feel like you're allowed to have the same amount of grief and to grieve in the same way as the Black families that are protesting today? Like, do you feel like you're allowed to have those same feelings?
You know, it's interesting, and this is funny. Jeff's like, are you going to bring up the article? So I have gotten, it's been a roller coaster, because obviously anytime I turn on the news and I see one of those, it deeply cuts in ways that obviously you can imagine. But I remember one time, I think you wrote an article for Huffington Post or something, and I don't know if it was having to do with police or anything, but it was having to do with the racial conversations. And there was something in the article saying, like, that white people want a seat at the table when this may not be your time to have a seat at the table or something.
Yeah.
Everything in me, I wrote a whole rebuttal to you on my phone.
You did?
Oh, fuck yeah.
Tell me.
I never
Do
sent
you have
it. I don't know if I have it. I'll send it to you. But basically, I was like, I want a seat at the table. I want to fight this fight. Like, I was angry. I was like, my dad's dead due to a police shooting. My brother's in jail due to a fucked up system, coming from poverty. Like, I'm facing these things too.
Yeah.
And I don't want to hear I don't get a seat at the table. I want to fight the fight of racism. You know what I mean? Like, I want to fight the injustice. And I'm not saying you said that, but
I kind of did. Yeah.
Okay.
I remember the article. It was two white women.
Yeah, that was
like
was
the,
hard
that
for
was
me.
In the title, yeah.
Because I think that for me, it's like, yes, my skin is white, and I grew up with, the privilege of white privilege.
Yeah.
However, in my family of origins, I haven't seen that in action.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
ain't nobody but me right now
Yeah.
benefiting from that. And that's because of really clear, intentional choices and completely reworking my entire life.
Yeah.
And so I remember feeling hurt by that and really feeling like that's not fair. Like, I want a seat at that table and I want a voice in this too. And I had felt like, oh no, but you're white.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting too. It's really interesting because even when I act, they're like, "Oh no, you can't act now. It's not a good time for white women, and you should find something." And I'm like, "What is this?"
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to tackle what white people deserve or any of that because I don't think it's about that. I think for me personally, it's what I've been through, my personal story and what my heart wants to be part of.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. And certainly not to defend my point. The article was absolutely not directed toward you.
I know.
It was but it was directed toward the white women that were calling me going, I feel you, I hear you.
Yeah.
And they didn't. They didn't. They don't have your experience. They
Right.
haven't experienced anything like yours. But they wanted to be a part of what I was doing, and it was just too painful to bring them into that.
And I understand that.
Yeah.
Well, I think that that's one of the things in life that we all need to understand too, is that like we can empathize and we can sympathize and we can witness someone in their pain.
Yes.
And we don't always have to understand it.
Right.
Or
right.
claim that we do.
Yeah.
Because like you said to me, I can't imagine, like, that would be really weird if you're like, yeah, I get it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, no, you don't.
And you'd be like, oh, you lost your father to police.
Right.
No, not at all. He's still alive.
Right.
But I totally get it.
And
yeah.
it wasn't for me. And just to clarify, it wasn't me, like, me personally being offended. It was being offended by the whole situation with the injustice of what's going on in these broken systems.
Yeah.
And so it just brought that up. It's not, you might not have even been.
Well, yeah, I mean, and
you get what I mean.
I do get what you mean. And we just had a guest on recently who talked about the difference, talking about privilege and hardships. And he's a Stanford professor, and a lot of the pushback, he's black, that he gets is that people say, well, I have problems too. I'm homeless. I've been dealing with this and this and this, and I'm white. So you can't say that I have privilege. And his thing was like, yes, but would you rather be white and homeless or black and homeless?
Totally.
Right. So,
yeah.
So that's really, I think the difference there, it's not that it's not real and painful and difficult, but it is more difficult. And the degree of difficulty is greater for black people.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Like I said, even in the trial, I believe we won because we were white.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I remember being like, if this was to be a black or brown family, like, would they gain the truth of the matter is, not only do I feel like it was because we were white, we also didn't come off as some like low class, like the truth is we were. Do you know what I mean? Like, we were, but we didn't come off that way. And so I think that 100% in that situation, that is white privilege.
Yeah.
Like, we were treated by the jury, whether they knew it or not, different because we were white.
Absolutely.
I'm
sure.
I'm with the fact that that's absolutely horrendous. Because even being white, them trying to tell me how to dress or be like that should determine
Yeah.
a value on a human being.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Yes. So the how you were treated, the legal system, we always say, is for black people. The justice system is for white people.
Mm-hmm.
However that played out, you lost your dad
Exactly.
to gun violence by a policeman. So why would your pain be any different?
Right. The pain
Regardless
is
of
not.
race, right? So
Right.
the way it was treated afterward might be.
Yeah.
But the pain that you experience, and that's why I was asking, like, do you feel like you're allowed to express that same pain that, Tyree's mom might be expressing now? It's different. It's her son.
Yeah.
But to someone who's lost their dad to that, and there are so many people that we've seen, or their whatever parent, their mom or their dad.
I feel like I do, in the sense of like my community.
Yeah.
Like I don't ever feel like I've never been heard or people dismiss the way I feel or my
Yeah.
pain or anything, like on a level of activism and that type of thing. I've never even attempted to do that.
Sure.
And it's not like I feel like I wish I could, but I'm not. It's that this is about these families.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Not to say like mine's over, because the grieving of losing someone to being killed, you're never going to get over.
Yeah.
However, publicly, maybe it's different for a white woman to grieve the loss of their father than it is for a black woman to lose.
I think now it is.
Yeah.
I mean, I just don't see it. I can't remember the last time I saw a white woman on the news grieving about the death of her loved one at the hands of the police.
I can't either. That's why I'm saying when it happened to us, it felt like this doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And there was no anyone coming around being like, no, this does happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't see that either.
No.
And it's to me, it's gutting to watch over and over again. It is so broken. And you watch these people grieve and you watch their pain and you watch their anger and you see the people, doing the protests or doing whatever. That's just a glimpse of the devastation that it causes.
Yeah.
Like the fact that every bullet is responsible for a life. That's a human being. That is a person. That is someone's son, mother, father. Like, it's just mind-blowing that the system is still operating the way it is.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So you talked about the grief that you were 15 when it happened. How old were you when you got sober?
30.
30.
Yeah.
Do you think that the drinking in there was part of your dealing with that grief?
I think that I turned immediately to drinking. But I always knew they were such severe alcoholics, and I had a few deals with myself. I will never drink and drive because of what happened to my dad.
Yeah.
So when I started drinking and driving, that's when I knew something was wrong.
Yeah.
Right? I knew I had to face something. And I knew when I started blacking out, and I knew I always knew there was a big life inside of me to be lived. I knew I wanted to be a mother. The day I got sober, I wrote a letter to my unborn children saying, I don't know who you are. I don't know where you're coming from, but I'm doing this for you because I want to break the legacy and I want to be the kind of mom you deserve, and I'm ready.
Wow.
And I have not had a drink since that day that I wrote that letter.
Yeah.
And obviously my dad dying really, I feel like in a way saved me in the sense that like I could have gone a lot longer, but I knew how far this thing could take me.
Sure.
And so, yeah, I definitely drank for a good 15 years numbing. I didn't mourn his death until I went back to school.
Yes. Spiritual psychology.
Yeah. Well, first I had to go back to high school.
Oh, right. Got
Yeah.
kicked out of all those high
Yeah. I
schools.
went back 30 years old, got sober, went and got my GED, went to college, and then
Nice.
did a master's program in spiritual psychology where I finally mourned my dad's death and where I met my husband.
So first, tell me how it was. What did that look like, mourning your dad's death in school?
I remember one day we were doing some sort of exercise and I was working with disappointing men. That was something that I just felt like I kept calling in disappointing men that just disappointed. They didn't come through. They didn't show up. They were almost, but not.
Mm-hmm.
And so we went and dug really deep into that disappointment. And I remember they asked me a question that brought me back to my dad. And I started crying on a Friday. Come Monday, still crying. I remember laying at my husband's house at that point, and I would get up to throw up. I mean, I was grieving, like,
And you were like
physically-
exercising.
yeah,
everything.
physically,
Yeah.
like, my body would shake. Like, my body shook for like 5 days, and I was throwing up and going
Wow.
back down, and like,
Wow.
I had to get support from the teachers. Like, it was heavy.
Yeah.
And it was like, whoa, all that was in my body this whole time? I had no idea. None.
You had almost like a detox, like you were there was something toxic in you that you were getting out.
Yeah, pain.
Yeah,
And then,
yeah.
you know, a lot of like, did a lot of work around the officer too.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Please.
You know?
Yeah.
Well, because, you know, the whole like forgiveness is for you, not for the other person. And I remember when I heard like a sheriff killed your dad, I pictured this sheriff, this man who, you know, had to do what he had to do. This guy was such a, I walked into court and I was like, that's him? He was just a simpy, like, wet willy of a human. Like, I looked at him and I was like, oh, he's pathetic. Like, there's something wrong with this person.
Yeah.
Like, it was clear. It wasn't
Yeah.
a man that was capable, that was doing the right thing. There was something wrong with this person. And so in school, we did so much work on self-forgiveness,
Yeah.
on forgiving myself for the judgments and the stories and what I made it mean about me to have that done, like releasing any victim mentality, releasing any kind of, you know, negative feelings that I still have towards that officer. And it's not like I'm going to be like, oh, love him, wish him well. However, I don't feel hatred in my body anymore,
Yeah.
you know, because I used to feel like absolute disgust.
Yeah.
And now I just kind of, you know.
I do know. I think about it like they don't rent a room in my head anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They used to. And I used to visit there and it was angry and painful, and now it's just like they're not there anymore. I can't call them up in my body the same way.
Right.
Yeah.
And I've even gotten to a point where I've wondered, like, what a horrible existence to have to live with that.
Yes.
What a horrendous experience.
Mm-hmm.
And like, maybe he's psychotic and never felt it, but if he's got any shred of decency in him,
Yeah.
I can't imagine that's a great thing to live with,
No.
you know?
Well, and you said he was unstable anyway. Like that
Yeah.
was the...
He failed 5 mental tests.
Yes. Which is a whole other... That could be a whole podcast. And it's like there's implicit bias against Black people or Latino people or brown people. But there's also just mentally unstable law enforcement officers who should not
Yeah.
be driving a car, let alone in charge of a gun. And there's just like, there's so many people like that walking around on these different forces. It seems like the sheriffs have a lot more than the police. I'm not really sure why that is. No shade on the sheriffs, but I just hear about it more often in that area, and it needs to be looked at.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It really does. And it almost feels ridiculous that this is one of the first conversations I've ever had about this outside of my close friends and family. You know?
Yeah. Well, thank you though for trusting us with that.
I trust you.
Yeah.
I love you.
Yeah,
and
I
you know
love you
that.
too.
And I think it's important.
It's so important, Olivia. Last thing.
Yep.
You're a mama now.
I am.
Yeah. Will you ever read your kids that letter you wrote?
The one to you? No.
Not that one.
Every night.
The one to them.
They can't wait to meet you.
Yeah. You're going to have to send that to me, by the way.
I will.
Okay.
I will.
Yeah.
It's not bad. It's
Okay.
not bad. It's just, it was more of an invitation to let me in.
Yeah. Yes.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, totally. Because they know I'm sober. They know their dad's sober. And they'll say it. They don't really know what it means. They'll be like, but you don't drink alcohol. And I'm like, nope, I don't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing to think about. I will for sure one day read that to them.
Yeah. Your kids are like otherworldly beautiful.
Thank you so much.
They really are. You guys did good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's
I know
been
you know that.
a whole other podcast.
Yes. But it is amazing for us, and I'll just speak for Scott in this moment, to have known you for as long as we've known you, seen you blossom from this girl, which is how I thought of you when I met you.
I mean, she was in high school when we met.
Yeah. To this really like beautiful, bountiful, generous, loving woman with a family who's a mama and a career, podcaster, friend, all these things that you are. It's gorgeous to witness.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. That's how I feel about you, honestly. Every time I see you putting yourself out there, I'm like, such a yes. I'm like, yeah, the world needs more of you.
Oh, that's so good.
It's
Thank
true.
you. Tell me all the ways people can find you.
They can find me by looking. Instagram, I'm Olivia Allen. I think my handles, though, it's like Olivia Allen.
Is that right?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know why. It's when I created it.
Yeah.
And then at the Broad Ideas Pod on Instagram, or, listen to the show on anywhere you get your podcasts.
Yes. Yes.
We're going to have it all in the show notes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
But if, they're driving and they want to be dangerous, just wait until you can click on the show notes
No.
later.
Pull over.
Or pull over
Yeah.
and check her out on
You
Instagram.
might want to pull over anyways because it's a little racy.
Yeah, oh, that's true. And if you're just curious about what she looks like, you can watch the video from this episode on our YouTube channel. She's gorgeous.
Oh,
and you will not be disappointed. All right, Olivia, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Olivia.
Hi, I'm Olivia Allen, and I am the only one breaking the legacy of alcoholism after my father was murdered.